the roll call?
Yes, I do, Joe.
Okay, Bill, you have everybody recorded that's here?
Thus far, yes.
Okay. I don't know if Jeff Stedman can hear me. I don't know if he's got this or not.
He's not on yet.
Okay. Has anybody heard from the DEEP about anything we need to know? That's a good answer. Okay. How about the Department of Aquaculture? Steve and Jeff are not here, so that's probably not likely. The Department of Health, Bill, anything from you that we need to know?
No, not right now. I mean, there's a side bit of information for what it's worth, but our reservoirs are at 100% capacity right now. At least it's good going into to summer.
That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
Okay. Harbor Commission, Jeff or John, neither of them are here. Planning and zoning, I haven't heard anything coming across from there. And Harbor Watch, I got a letter from Nikki Spiller, an email from Nikki Spiller asking for our support. She was writing a grant for the Long Island Sound Futures Fund to have a marine debris grant, whereby she would purchase a drag to accumulate marine debris that's on the bottom, as well as having receptacles to throw them out near shore. And I happily wrote her, I agreed to it. I didn't think any of you would have a problem with that. So I quickly whizzed out a letter to her in support of that. Okay, and old business, any questions on that before we go on? Okay.
Joe?
Yeah.
So two quick things. At some point in the meeting, either now, because you mentioned Harbor Commission, or at the end of the new business, I wanted to just announce the Planning and Zoning Department and the zoning rewrite of the regulations, the different public hearings and
Okay.
meetings. Would this be it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the Harbor the Planning and Zoning Department, after 30 years, was given permission to hire a consultant to rewrite and reorganize the zoning regulations of our city. It was needed because there had been a lot of variances over the years, and it was not always smooth and difficult to read. And there's some modern land use practices that were not being included. So long story short is the consultant put together a draft. The draft is currently circulating around the city. They're holding different public meetings in each of the 5 districts, voting districts in our city. There is a link on this, I hope, on the homepage of the city website. And it was mentioned that the staff at request is planning to meet with certain boards and commissions, and they mentioned the Harbor Commission was going to have a meeting with the staff, maybe at their next meeting. I do not know yet the date. And I thought it would be a great idea to make sure the Water Quality Committee is included in that invitation. If not, I think we do have time till the end of I think June to weigh in. I highly recommend people take a look at a map, and the map and the revised regs and the current regs are all on the city website under planning and zoning. But I do know that there are ways to protect water quality through zoning overlays, that sort of thing, including river protection areas. So I think it's really important that we either meet with the Harbor Commission, or maybe the Harbor Shellfish and Water Quality Committee meets with the staff at the same time, so we could all have the same themes. And so, Mr. Chairman, I ask that, would you be able to, or could Mr. Mooney, connect with the planning and zoning staff would be Stephen Kleppen or Brian Baker or Ms. Vonacek, Jessica Vonacek, who's the chief.
I had already been invited and I had already participated in at least 2 of the meetings, possibly 3. I start to lose connectivity as to which meetings are for what purpose. I did express extreme concern over the fact that the plans that I had seen were planning on putting high density housing and redevelopment on an area known to flood. And it appeared from the conversation I had that the experts that they hired disagreed with me. I'll leave it at that. I will go on and I'll look at it. And any of you are welcome to look at that. It's I'll see if I can dig up the email.
Oh.
But you're all citizens of this town and you're all capable of expressing yourselves. It does not have to be under the guise of the Mayor's Water Quality Committee.
Hey, Joe,
Well, if,
let me tell you, East Norwalk's been trying to fight over where Wells Fargo's going.
Yep.
Enough people sign signatures and everything. We might as well talk to the wall because that's what planning and zoning does now. They don't care.
well, I take
So
exception.
they're building it on swamp.
If we could go back to my original request, while I do agree that we all are individuals, I do believe in the power of groups, and we have a particular, purpose in the city, and the Mayor's Water Quality Committee could have more. I think it would be good if the whole committee could meet with the staff, either on a special meeting or when they meet with the Harbor Commission. And that's what I'm requesting. And also, I do ask, Mr. Chairman, when there are official documents and emails on policy and the like, is there a chance that we could be copied on that, just so that we're up to speed on what kinds of things we're doing in our city? I know that at times, of course, you get a request or questions from the city and you have to respond quickly. But if that response includes letters or any of that, rather than making us, have to search for them under freedom of information, I think it would be really great for the record if we could put it at least into the record, either the minutes, or you could just copy all of us, as a copy to your responses, so that we are all talking the same talk, walking the same walk. But I do think it's important that the Water Quality Committee weigh in as a group on the zoning regulations, because there are ways to help create cleaner water, not only quantity, but quality, through the use of zoning and land use. So,
Diane, I think all of us that are here are well aware of that. When I go to these meetings and I express myself at these meetings, I don't know if anybody takes notes. I know I don't. And part of that is many of us are overwhelmed with what's going on. But all of us agreed that there should be no major construction in flood zones. That's all I expressed. And the way their consultants were targeting the areas, they were planning on doing that. Now, I don't know how much more you expect. If every time I go out and I'm asked a question in public, I have to send you a note on that.
no, I'm not saying
It's not
that.
gonna happen.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you send an opinion in writing to the mayor or a committee, so that we all are on the same page, that is an official document.
I agree.
Yeah, so the
And
thing
we-
is,
We did
Um,
send out the recommendations, and that's what I stuck to.
yeah. Well, again, I reiterate that I ask that we send out a quick email to the staff as a committee, that we meet either with, when they're meeting with Harbor Commission, or we meet separately, because beyond what you just mentioned, building in a floodplain, there are many other things related to water quality and zoning in areas beyond what you're talking about. So that is why, in a holistic manner, that we approach, this is a once in a lifetime for us. This is a major positive move by our city to try to modernize our zoning regs. Now, without our learned suggestions, they may miss in amending the zoning regs to help water quality. So that is why I still think we should, as a committee, take a look, and then at our next meeting, discuss whether we want to add or send anything to them. They're asking for our opinions, and it should be a group effort, not just individual. In this case, I mean, we can individually put in our thoughts, but I'm saying, as a water quality committee, I think it has a lot of value to the city. They are asking for our opinions. They're making time in their budget for the staff to speak with subject matter experts, and I think we qualify. So would anyone
Joe,
else
this is
on this
Jeff.
committee? Jeff,
Yeah,
you know,
Jeff.
I'd like to hear from others.
May I just, I don't mean to
Go ahead.
keep the discussion going on too long, but this is a significant, as Diane said, matter, and it has to do much to do. The Harbor Commission will have a big input into this. And when Diane said it's a once in a lifetime, it's actually, for some of us, it's twice, because we were involved back in 1988 and in the early 1980s when Norwalk developed its municipal coastal program. And the municipal coastal program consists of the aspects of the plan of conservation and development and the zoning regulations as they affect the waterfront. So to the extent that this rezoning effort affects the coastal area, it's an amendment to Norwalk's municipal coastal program, and it requires review and comments by DEEP. And DEEP, their comments are not regulatory; they're advisory in nature. And if some of us, you remember back in the 1980s, when the Coastal Management Act in Connecticut took effect in 1979, and then after that, Norwalk developed its municipal coastal program and had a committee to do that. And the first thing that they did was amend the master plan at the time, or the plan of development. That was in 1982, but they did not amend the zoning regulations along the waterfront until 1988. And that's when the Marine Commercial District was established. It applies to the Water Street area and down at the Cove Marina area. And it took them until 1988 because the property owners objected to restrictions on the future development of the property. And at that time, the big issue wasn't coastal resilience. It was the impact on water-dependent uses. And I'll stop in a minute here. So the Marine Commercial District was established in 1988. And actually, some of us went to the ceremony at the Maritime. It was called the Maritime Center at the time, for DEEP to announce and certify Norwalk's municipal coastal program. The next year, the zoning of the Marine Commercial District was changed because the Planning and Zoning Commission was separated into separate Planning and Zoning Commissions. The Zoning Commission changed the Marine Commercial District, and it lessened the restrictions. And the next year, in 1989, DEP sued the zoning board, the zoning commission in Norwalk for failure to comply with the Coastal Management Act. So all that's part of the history of this. And when we recently reviewed the comprehensive document for the rezoning, and it's very professionally done, it's very comprehensive, it's a tremendous document, but it's difficult to understand and to read the impact it might have on the Marine Commercial District. And also it appears that there are new waterfront zoning districts that are created, including for the area in East Norwalk between the bridges on the east side where the Liberty Square area is. In fact, if you look at one of the renderings that was put together to get public attention to this, you can see that rendering envisions substantial new development in that area. So yes, it has to be referred to the Harbor Commission. The commission has to understand what's being proposed for the waterfront, and it also has to be reviewed and commented on by DEEP. And the last thing I say, and this is from experience in other towns recently, DEEP has taken the position that, and now, as I said, it's not just the impact on water-dependent uses of rezoning, it's the impact of flood vulnerability and resiliency planning. So DEEP has taken a formal position that proposals that would increase residential density in the coastal floodplain are inconsistent with the Coastal Management Act. Now, those regardless of whether they meet FEMA requirements. So there's a whole bunch of things to look at, and to not to be negative, but to look at this really good effort that the city has put together, but to look at it in a way that's consistent with what the mission of the commission, the Harbor Commission, and the Shellfish Commission, and also the Water Quality Committee. So sorry to go on, but when Diane said it's once in a lifetime, I remember again being involved with this back in the 1980s, and I'll stop. Thank you for listening.
I was part of that first round, Diane.
Me
Yeah.
too. I was on the Harbor Commission when it first was formed with Mayor Collins.
And ironically, we had input, whether it was completely listened to. We know that wasn't the case. And that's my concern here. I'd be willing, at the committee's request, to go. But I want the committee to request it. How many of you would be willing to attend a Harbor Commission meeting?
I already do.
Okay. So we'll do it. I'll write to Alan and I'll ask him when he's being requested to have a meeting with planning and zoning, and we'll go from there. And then I'll get that out to all of you.
Thank you. I
Yep.
think it'll be worth it.
Can I ask,
hope.
can I ask
I
a
hope.
really dumb question? I'm scrolling through it now, and is there one map that shows that like labels each district? I don't see a map. I mean, this is not for the meeting, but if anybody has that, send it to me, Diane.
I'll send it to you. There's a map of what it is now and a map of the proposed. And there's two ways, a PDF and then an interactive map for the new
Oh.
proposed. And then for each section, I was told that there's a map just showing that area, but it's there, but I haven't found it yet. Because
I don't see it in the Norwalk Building Zone Regulations Final Public Draft, March 2023. There's no map. Oh, maybe I don't know. Anyway,
If you
we'll
keep
figure it out.
scrolling, yeah, there is,
Okay.
there are maps,
Okay.
yes. I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, Louise, the problem isn't just the map, it's also what goes on behind the scenes on that map and what they will allow and permit in those certain areas. And that's something that needs absolute clarification. And that also was a part of the recommendation we passed on to the Common Council. And the Common Council, I believe, has to approve these zoning regulations anyways. So we've got two areas that can be approached if that's the desire of the committee. So we go from there.
Well, with the water going up, they're saying, and then within 25 years, they're gonna be what, another 10 inches, they're saying?
10 inches to 2 feet.
You're right. Well, you can
I
kiss,
thought it was 20 inches by 2050 in Norwalk,
Well,
maybe.
that's under 2 feet.
It's,
under 2 feet.
it's gonna
It's gonna get
raise
wet.
anyways. We all know it's gonna raise. Look at Water Street that floods now. They built those buildings behind it. They built them up. So when the people are in there, they can't get out. When the
Um,
flood comes.
Can I make a comment, Joe?
Go ahead.
I just was in a call, like kind of randomly with Mike Toll. Do you guys know him from Westcog? And he has a presentation. I mean, maybe we should have him come to the committee. He has a presentation on riparian zoning. So he is trying to talk to as many municipalities as he can about actual zoning regs to protect riparian zone buffer zones. So that's not something that we have. So it means you would have to keep them vegetated, for example, and hopefully, not be able to build in them. I don't know anything about it, except that it's interesting to me. I didn't know that existed. And he had the whole presentation and is looking to give it to municipalities. So maybe we should invite him. And, now that we're in the process of changing our zoning regs, this is something that we could raise, as a possibility.
Yes, Louise, that's what I don't know if you were on the call yet, but that was the main reason why I requested that we talk to the staff and the consultant because of riparian overlays that are used in other cities and towns and, states. So this would absolutely be germane and why it's important to hear it from us. The staff, Steve Kleppen and Brian Baker, have literally requested environmental zoning, additional environmentally related zoning suggestions. So that's why I feel it's important. And Joe, thank you for reaching out. Now, again, we are also responsible for beyond the harbor. Of course, all of the city drains into the harbor eventually, but I hope that Mr. Kibbe would be appreciative of us mentioning these type of zone overlays along rivers and streams as well, because it all flows into the harbor. It's indirectly and directly related. So,
Joe, should I put you in touch with Mike, or what do you think about inviting him? It's because he's really an expert. I mean, Westcon has been doing all this research on how other cities do this, and so that might be useful to us. Or do you want to know more? You want to talk to him?
I'd like to know more, first of all, because he might be presenting to us what we already know and what this.
Well, I don't think so, because
Well,
it's a
The
specific
people who
type of,
need it are the planning and zoning people.
right. And so, but we could be better prepared to, comment. It's not the idea of what a riparian zone is or how important it is. It is practices of zoning, adding that to the zoning regs in a new way. So, I mean, that's not something I know about. Maybe everybody else does, but I think I want to hear more about it. So
I don't know all about it, but I do know what I've read about in many other communities. And I actually have a former student that's heavily involved with this out in the Seattle area.
cool.
And they have, Louise, you live up near the Silvermine River, just imagine this. Any area out there that floods, they can declare eminent domain on the property
Wow.
and take it over.
Wow.
And when that happens, that's where she gets involved. The thought there is you're minimizing the risk to the occupants, you're minimizing the risk to the people who have to go in there and rescue them, and you're creating an area that is more open for recreation.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah, now based on Sandy, that would hit a lot of South Norwalk.
Well, if you look at the maps for the whatever, there's so many things,
Yep.
consultants in Norwalk, but the ones that are doing the resiliency work now, those maps they sent, when you look at South Norwalk, the whole thing is underwater.
Yeah, I mean, our only option is to turn into the Netherlands and build dikes all over the place.
Yeah, and they do have some of those in that plan.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll put you in touch with Mike
Okay,
so you can hear more.
thanks.
What are they saying about the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, it
With all
has,
this building going?
it has to be
I-
protected. It's gonna have to be protected.
Well, not just that, they can't handle all these apartments going up.
Peter, they have told me on more than one occasion that they're more than competent at being able to handle all the extra population and all the extra water coming in from those areas. And, it's a matter of who you're going to believe. Some of us that have been around a long time know better.
Yeah, Well, the thing that gets me is, all you gotta do is ask them to prove it, and you won't get an answer.
Correct.
They won't. As a matter of fact, every time we went to a wastewater treatment plant meeting, as soon as we walked in, they went into,
Executive session.
yep, as soon as
Yeah.
we walked in. So they
Yeah.
don't want you to know anything.
Okay, anything
Joe,
else?
it's Jeff again.
I'm sorry?
Mind if I say, this is Jeff. Do you mind if I say one more thing, Joe?
Go ahead, Jeff.
You know, it is sort of like history repeating itself, because the large part, the impetus for the Coastal Management Act, Connecticut Act in 1979, was to respond to increasing development pressures on waterfront properties in the coast. And if you remember, there were some big projects in Stamford that replaced water-dependent uses. But at that time, the desired use and the pressure for redevelopment had to do with office development. Now it's the same. There's this increase that's 40 plus years later. Now we have these forces focusing on redevelopment of the shoreline again, but the desired use is for residential development. But
Yep.
the issue is the same. It's the impact on water-dependent uses, and now, as we mentioned, there's more concern about resiliency. And now you've got to have to think about what's the relevance of the Connecticut Coastal Management Program. If these projects for increased development in the floodplain are determined by DEEP to be inconsistent with the Coastal Management Act, but they have no way of enforcing that. You could argue what's the relevance of the Coastal Management Program, but these are all it's a very interesting issue, and we're all trying to look at it, not to be negative, but to try to make recommendations and do what we think is right to protect coastal resources and advance the goals of water quality and the harbor management plan. And I'll stop talking, but it is history revisiting itself in large part. Thank you.
And Diane, just for public information, after the first meeting that they had with myself and members of the Harbor Commission, I expressed my concern. I expressed the committee's concern, and I was not invited back for the next meeting, nor the next meeting, nor the next meeting. So that's part of my frustration, is why go and talk to a wall? And I know you don't feel that way, but you know what? You're entitled to that.
Well, I'm not even sure what meeting you're talking about, but
We had meetings with them when they first started going over this zoning. And we had it in person. And we were asked to express ourselves after they showed us a preliminary idea of what they had. And the first thing out of my mouth was, you're planning on building high-density housing on Water Street. And they said, well, we can handle that. And I told them the reason they call it Water Street is because it goes underwater. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. If you just get down there during a high spring tide, you'll know that. It doesn't even have to be a storm. And if it's a storm like Sandy, it really goes underwater. And I told them that boats from the harbor break away because they pop their pilings. The docks literally go over the pilings, and then they slam into the side of the harbor that the wind is blowing to. And I said, can your building sustain having 30 and 40-foot boats slamming into it? And their reply was, the architect can work around that. So I'll talk to Alan. We'll see what we can do. Alan's been very amenable to working with us, so we'll go from there.
Mhm. Safety in numbers. So I think it would be very beneficial to the zoning, this project. I really do think more of us, we all have different backgrounds, and I think it would be helpful. So great. Thank you.
Anybody else on that topic? Okay. Under old business, I had 4 letters back from common council members stating they are in discussions on PFAS. I haven't heard if they've made any decisions, and I haven't heard if and part of that PFAS was whether or not they were going to permit funding for the artificial turf. So I don't know if they're going to approve it or not at this point. Louise, have you heard anything?
There hasn't been a vote yet.
Okay.
But we-
Diane?
That's great. Could you let us know which of the council members got back to you? Again, it's one of those things where would be really helpful to kind of know where they're leaning towards and who is for it, who is against it. And for the sake of transparency, is there a chance you could share those emails?
Diane, for you, I will forward them to you.
Well, to all of us. I mean, I'm not
Do
just,
all of you want copies of those emails saying we acknowledge this and we're discussing it? And you're the
Well,
only one.
we're a committee. I mean, we're a committee.
Sure.
That means
Um,
something.
I was going to add one thing that Dick and Norm were incredibly gracious to host the Common Council on a boat trip last week. Was it last week? 2 weeks ago? And one of the things that Norm mentioned was his concerns about both pesticides and PFAS, and specifically the fields going in at Broad River, so close to the river. So I think that was really helpful. And then Dick, showed everybody the actual water monitoring kit, and talked about the need for funding for more water quality testing for PFAS. And it was just a really positive thing. Dick, do you want to add anything? You're on mute, though. You're muted, Dick. You're muted.
Still muted.
Dick, press the long bar.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Did it went through? Okay. I still can't figure this thing out. We spent a lot of time on that boat trip, approaching council members and talking to them and trying to show the downside of going ahead with these fields. And my feeling was, we got done, there was very little argument from anybody that this was a good deal to put these things in. So I think we're headed in the right direction there. All we do now is wait and see what the outcome is. And I will tell you, on the Wilton field, they're marching ahead with that, although they've got a vote on May 10th as to
No,
whether
it's
they're
this
going
Saturday. This Saturday. The
to,
6th.
this Saturday.
Yeah.
And the vote is as to whether they put in a $2 million field, turf field with a cover that you can inflate on demand. And it's $2 million. And so far, to even approach that number, they've had to short the school budget by 1.3 million, and they've had to raise taxes by 6 mils. So who knows where that's going? We know a lot of people have signed against it. So we'll see.
Is that a referendum in Wilton? This is Jeff.
That's how Wilton works. They work by charter, and every May they have a town vote on like everything that is going to happen in the town. They don't have an ordinance committee. They don't have different, it's just weird. So yes, they do this every year, and this is how the budget and line items are. Okay. So yeah, it's a referendum. Long answer, sorry.
They're
Thank you.
capital budget items. Each item is voted on by the public, which is very different than the way we do things here.
But I just wanted to thank Dick and Norm. That was part of a grant that NRWA and the Norwalk Land Trust had gotten. And we threw in that we would take the Common Council out on Norm's boat. And then it was actually so great. It was really good conversation about water quality and about the role of the council, and everybody making the real connection between the importance of the shellfish industry and clean water. And so I feel like we should do that every year.
Yeah, that would be great. Is there
We
a
should
chance?
take our committee out with them. That'd be a good
That
thing.
would be great.
I think it went over very well. Everything I could see. Louise and I are not on friendly territory in Wilton anymore.
They don't like us in Wilton.
That's a good thing.
That's
It's
because we
happened
did,
before and then it always gets okay again.
that's because we did the testing.
Anything else before we move on?
I'd just like to know just who from the council was on the boat trip.
I'll have to send you a list, Diane. I can't.
Okay,
I'll send you a list.
sounds good.
One thing, Joe, does everybody know where the EPA stands presently on drinking water standards for PFAS?
Not at this point.
Well, I have a little bit of an update for you. Last June or July, they came out with dire consequences for PFOA and PFOS. PFOS was to be 0.02 parts per trillion, and the other one was 0.004 parts per trillion. Meanwhile, the Wells field here in Norwalk are struggling along to try to meet 10 on PFOS and 16 on PFOA. That's the state mandate that's been given to them after the panic hit the fan over 70 parts per trillion, which they obviously weren't hitting. So now the EPA has come back and they said, oh, well, wait a minute. We're going to go, we'll reduce those to 4 parts per trillion, both those two. And in addition to that, we've got 4 more products here we're evaluating. There may be a total of 6 we're going to give you direction on. But get this, you don't have to have it in place or be ready. It will not be mandated into law until September of 2024. And then you have 9 months to comply. How's that? Louise, you want to tell them a little about SB 100?
I don't know if, I don't think it's been voted on yet, but I think everybody knows it's, it would be $75 million for municipalities in the state to do PFAS testing and remediation. So it seems like it's going to pass, but I don't think it's been voted on yet. I'll have to check that. I'll check that and let everybody know. That's the only PFAS bill we have, which is kind of unfortunate. I know there was a group working, and Diane's on that group, working to add, more comprehensive language to that bill, but didn't happen this year.
Just so
more
you
like
know,
Maine.
Maine has outlawed most PFAS products, including playing fields. And 2 weeks ago, Vermont followed suit. Massachusetts is reviewing playing fields, and so is New York. So we're teaming up against us here for acceptance of these things. And I think if all the states all around us do it, we're going to look pretty bad.
Connecticut is the land of steady habits.
Anything else? Okay. Moving on. Diane?
Sorry, I forgot. I'm going to send, once I find it, I sat in on the Environmental Business Council of New England had a webinar yesterday on PFOS and PFOS and PFOA movement through soil. So a soil mobility. And they had USGS apparently did some extensive testing on the movement of these 2 compounds in different kinds of soil and also by depth. And the conclusion I got from, it was a very complicated but very interesting webinar, is that it always depends on the geology, depends on a lot of different factors, but the first 6 inches apparently have the higher levels. It depends, of course, on what type of geology. So I will find that document and send it to you all. It was an interesting webinar, and there are still a lot of questions on PFAS and its movement in soil. And it has a lot to do with the situation at Broad River, Wilton, you name it. So I will send that on to all of you when I find the actual report.
Louise, that House bill, does it have, you said it was 75 million. Did that include treatment and removal of?
I'll send you the bill. It says, I think it says mitigation. So, I don't know what that means. I'll send you the bill.
Okay. And along those lines, for Bill Mooney, has the health department given any consideration to advising the public about this and possibly encouraging them to use filters that are either reverse osmosis or activated charcoal?
Not as of yet. We'll have to talk with Deanna. She may be waiting to make sure that we're all speaking on consistent terms with other communities in the area before we start committing to anything. I was kind of hoping that maybe some of that 75 million would go to filtration of some sort. I don't know how they would go about disseminating it, how that would actually work, but that would probably be a good way to start, because the remediation, you're talking, I mean, that you're talking bees with billions of dollars, I think, because it's a regional issue. So it might be, although it's somewhat of a Band-Aid approach in terms of just putting filters on people's faucets, but it's probably the most immediate impact you could have. But I honestly don't know where the rest of the state is on at this point.
Well, if they did it at the actual water treatment plants, then you would lose the fluoride treatment. So you'd have an epidemic of tooth decay, unfortunately. Because the reverse osmosis as well as the activated charcoal removes fluoride. And it would also remove the chlorine. So that impacts the health of the water as it's going through the pipes. And that,
I found the bill. Do you want me to tell you what it says?
yeah, go ahead.
It's an act establishing an account in the general fund to provide grants to towns that need PFAS testing and remediation. So the money would be with DEEP, and DEEP, in consultation with the Commissioner of Public Health, could provide municipalities with grants to test for the presence of PFAS contamination in drinking water supplies and to remediate any such contamination. And it's its own revolving fund. It's not part of the general fund. So such account shall contain all monies required by law to be deposited in such amount, blah, blah. So yeah, so maybe they keep funding it, maybe it's a new fund that's gonna it looks like continue to be there for this in the future. Starting with the 75 million, because 75 million is actually nothing for
It
this,
really is.
nothing.
Joe, when you're dealing with a state that doesn't even have surface water quality standards out yet, at this late date, I would say that this 75 million is going to take a long time to get out and get distributed in any meaningful way.
One thing that happened though is that DEEP has, I heard this, I don't know this for sure, but I think this is right, that Megan Lally, who everybody knows because she was the volunteer water quality monitoring organizer at DEEP Forever, she's been moved over to being in charge of PFAS at DEEP.
That's right.
Right. So at least they have a person whose job is to be, looking at this, which I think is important and good.
Have they, to the best of your knowledge, I was informed that they do not have the ability to test for PFAS at DEEP. Have you heard anything different?
You mean that Dick would know?
No, we haven't.
Okay. And has UConn developed the capacity to do that?
They claim they have, and they underwrote the whole thing down in Greenwich, where they monitor 4 embayments and check the shellfish sediments, mid-water quality, and they found no evidence of PFAS. Christopher Perkins head the lab for UConn, and he's the one that was in charge of that program, or he wrote it.
Okay. Okay, moving on. I hope. Diane, it's your show now. MS4 as well as, I forgot to fill in your guide for determining water quality issues, who to call.
Well, I'm not, okay, so for the first item, under old business, I was given permission to forward the comments or the suggestions in in addition to the city's 2022 MS4 permit. So we added, based on our conversations, I wrote down suggestions to enhance the 2023 MS4 permit plans that the city sends to DEEP. And they could always forward amendments. This all is happening this month. I just sent those out because I wasn't sure after I saw our agenda. I thought I had been given permission to forward that, and so I did, and I copied Joe, and all of you have a copy of it. It's the purple text in an attachment I sent a couple of times, especially our last month, prior to the last month's meeting. And per Jeff Stedman and others, I said that we would like to work with DPW, and we also reserve our ability to add from time to time, add further suggestions in the future throughout the year. And so that is pretty much it. I will tell you, because I do follow many of this city council committee agendas. Currently, the city of the DPW committee this past Tuesday had an item on the agenda to hire a consultant to help update the MS4, which they did, I think at least 10 years ago. And that was needed, where they look at the, I don't have a copy of the contract, so I don't know the details or the terms, but I'm going to ask to get a copy of it just for my own edification. But for $250,000, which seems kind of big, our POCD was less than $200,000 to do the city POCD, but this is $250,000 with, formerly it was called Camp Dresser McKee. I guess it's now CDM Smith. Now that was approved by the DPW Committee of the Common Council on Tuesday. You could always listen to the recording on what the discussion was, and then the full council will vote on that item this coming Tuesday in their full council meeting on Tuesday. The second and fourth Tuesday of the month is when the Common Council meets together. So what I did state in the public participation portion was only that they should look for comments from the Water Quality Committee, and that we stood ready to assist and we're interested in working with them. And also we want to ensure that there is more public participation in knowing that there is such a document, there is such a permit, and that it's important for people to understand water quality. And that was pretty much it.
Okay, now moving forward,
Yes.
are we going to be ready for the next round next year?
I guess I don't understand. I know that the city has not, my understanding is the city has not forwarded the final plan. And so assuming that the council will approve the update, I'm hoping, and I would imagine there will be some public participation in updating, which isn't due until next June, May or June, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, so we should keep our eye on and look forward to discussing with this consultant and DPW to keep, so that they include some of our ideas.
okay.
On the second part, Joe, about it wasn't on the agenda, so I'm not really prepared, except to say that if everyone on this call could look at the links to other state complaint forms and suggestion forms, I would like to know if anyone on this committee would like to work on this with me. I think that Steve said he would, but I have to look at our recording to see.
I think Steve said he would think about it. And
Okay.
part of that has to be, I know right now he's out in Chicago. So that his travel schedule is getting ridiculous. but that's his job, so.
Yeah, on background, just generally, it's that we, on occasion, we'll get either concerns or complaints, and it's always good to have a consistent process so that we can move them along smoothly and consistently and efficiently, and make sure we include the proper boards, commissions, and staff. And so I'm just starting to put that together. I probably by next month, with whoever else would like to help. Dick Harris, I thought maybe you had mentioned, I don't remember, to tell you the truth, from last month, but anyway, I'll try to put together a template and then look forward to all of your suggestions.
Okay, we look forward to that. Okay, next item, are any comments from the public?
There is no one in the waiting area, attendees.
Excellent. And reading and approval of the minutes from April 6th. And I had attached that with what I sent out. Diane?
I just had a couple, maybe some clarification, so it's very quick, and I did not have time to send it. But in the minutes where we discuss PFOS and PFOA, I just wanted to make sure that, and Dick just reiterated what EPA originally had said, but I think because it is so complicated, the 0.02 and 0.004, I just thought if maybe with Dick's assistance, we could just clarify that for the record, because it would be confusing to anyone looking at our minutes, because currently it's 4 parts per trillion or nanograms per liter. So I guess I just was hoping that we could clarify those numbers.
Dick,
And
is that how, well, there's a problem here, because if the minutes are stating what Dick had shared with us, then it should stay as it is. If the public wants clarification, they could write to us and we'll clarify it.
yeah,
But the minutes are supposed to be of what was stated at the meeting.
oh, I know, but I don't know if the decimal point is in the right spot. That's what I
Yeah,
wondered.
it is.
Okay,
It is in
all
the
right.
right spot.
Okay, great. And then the second quick thing is, there's a PFAS-free Connecticut group, not PFOS alone. So it's very minor, but it's a little further down from there. I think Louise had mentioned, or someone had mentioned, that there's a PFAS-free Google group. And in the minutes, it says PFOS, PFOS. So it should read just PFAS, PFAS, because that's kind of incorporates all the compounds. That's it.
One thing you might add, Joe, it says up there, the state has announced a health advisory. It isn't the state, it's the EPA.
EPA, yeah.
Yep, so that
Bill,
should
you
be
have that?
EPA. Pardon me?
I asked Bill if he had that.
Make you know of it now.
Okay. Anything else? So can somebody move to accept the minutes with the amendments as stated?
I'll move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Excellent. So moved. And with that, and almost on time, can I have a motion to adjourn? Diane, with a smile,
I'll second.
and second Louise with a smile. See you next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Maybe earlier, depending on what Alan Kibbe and the planning and zoning.
Yeah, look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night,
Thank
everyone.
you. Night.